We're talking about whether you are worth it, which is a pillar to you being sexually fulfilled.
So, the following is an actual letter from a woman that we're going to call Jane. And as we go through Jane's story, I want you to really listen to it in terms of how Jane doesn't feel worthy enough to ask for what she wants in her relationship.
So listen to what her situation is. Make mental notes of what you relate to. For example, does Jane's letter make you angry, sad, frustrated, or something else? And I want you to pay attention to how is your body reacting.
And when you pay attention to that body reaction, everyone in our body, we have a place where we feel a yes and a place where we feel a no. And so if you are familiar with that no spot, that's where you want to really make that mental note. Jane wrote us an email and said, I am 42 years old. I had a baby 3 years ago, and I'm not overweight or depressed, but I have absolutely no sex drive. I wouldn't care if I went the rest of my life without sex. Though I do have sex with my husband at least once a week for his benefit. He tries to get sex at least 2 or 3 times a week, and I usually let him know that I'm just too tired.
She goes on to say, I get up at 5 a.m. every morning and get my 3-year-old daughter ready for daycare. Then we're out the door by 6:20 a.m. every day. It's very stressful trying to get her ready. Then I commute to my job and work for 10 hours before commuting home for 45 minutes. I finally get home at 6 p.m.
She continues, I'm angry with my husband for asking for sex when I'm so tired. I think it's selfish of him to think that I'm going to have sex for an hour starting at 10 p.m. when I have to get up so early the next morning.
She goes on, plus he never wants to have sex quickly. Whenever we have sex, he feels compelled to attend to my needs and keeps attending to me until I've had multiple orgasms. I'm happy with one orgasm and try to speed things up and move him along, but I don't think he can get aroused until I have multiple orgasms.
He never seems able to just have intercourse and skip the foreplay. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood to have him spend so much time on me. I'd be fine just having quick intercourse and then being done. So I avoid sex completely because it's so involved. It just takes so much time and effort.
During most of our sexual encounters, I don't fake orgasms, but I do think of other stuff, mostly that I'm not into the sex. I wonder why he can't just move it along. He has no idea I don't really enjoy our sex because I do have orgasms and tell him how great it was each time. Is it wrong to keep this up?
I love him and I don't want to make this an issue in our marriage, but I am miserable inside because I feel that every time we get into bed, or if I ask for a massage or some other touch, he turns it into sex. And I've never had a big sex drive, but it has diminished completely after the baby. What should I do?
I think the big question is, why are women still here?
Hmm.
Let's just acknowledge how completely messed up it is that Jane is compelled to push herself so hard, ask for so little, and expect even less.
And the real sad thing here is Jane is the norm. This is not the exception. But her situation could be fixed relatively swiftly and efficiently if she had a direct conversation with her partner.
What we as women are working towards, believing we deserve to easily have a conversation where our sexual needs matter just as much as our partners, that you are sexually worthy.
And in order for Jane to move into believing that she's worth having the sex that she wants, there needs to be a shift in her mindset from negative to positive. So currently, Jane believes sex is negative and that it's sex's fault. She believes that sex is not worth the hassle. And to be clear, sex is a neutral state that we attach emotions to, meaning this isn't sex's fault.
Yeah. So instead of pointing the finger of blame at sex, Jane needs to put the finger back on herself and ask, why she doesn't feel like she can have that difficult conversation.
And you know what? I get why she can't. I mean, she's got a busy life. She is a young child. She's commuting. She's got an intense job, and sex is just at the bottom of her list. And for her, it's not worth the trouble. She doesn't want to create conflict. She doesn't want to walk into that. And that means taking on uncomfortable partner issues. Sounds like, generally speaking, their relationship sounds pretty solid. So she doesn't want to rock that boat. She doesn't want to communicate her frustrations. And she doesn't want to share this resentment that she's been able to avoid. And she has no desire to deal with it right now.
Yeah. And I also get it. I was in Jane's shoes not so long ago, and I remember spinning the plates and, trying to, putting one more plate to spin. It just felt like everything would come crashing down. However, shifting your mindset from negative to positive is a non-confrontational way to get rid of shame and build your sexual self-confidence. If she just had a direct conversation with her husband, yeah, there might be some unhappiness, and I'm sure he would appreciate a direct conversation more than going around the conversation, and he certainly, I can't speak for the husband, but I feel like having the direct conversation, it's like ripping the bandage off. It's really tough, but I think for him, it would be so much better than her constantly acting like she's resentful towards sex and avoiding it. I think it's a tough thing to do. We all can agree it's a tough thing to do. And it's so much better for your relationship when you can.
Yeah. And I'd shared this example earlier in the podcast, but I think it applies here too, where there was that time for years, when we were having sex where, I was just in my head, and for me, it was just it was kind of like this. It was taking so long. I was like, what is wrong with me? Why is this taking so long? It's taking so long for me to get there. Da, 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 da. And I would just be stuck in my head, stuck in my head, stuck in my head. And so then eventually I would, fake an orgasm, go ahead and end it. I'd be like, oh, actually, I didn't fake too much, but I would just,
I'm good.
I'd call it a day, right? I'd be like, look, you have yours. It's not happening for me tonight. And then when I finally talked to my husband about this and shared, I was like, I just get so frustrated with myself because I feel like my body is taking so long. And then he laughed, not at me, but he was so surprised because he's like, Amy, I'm doing that on purpose. Like I am trying to draw this out because I'm trying to tease and give you extra pleasure. And, and then sort of to Jane's point, there's times that you want to be able to have more fun drawn out. And then there's times where it's like, okay, it is 10 o'clock. I'm really tired. Like I want to have this connection with you, but let's just do this in a little bit of a faster way tonight. And then next Thursday, when grandma's picking up the daughter, we can have a little bit more fun.
So there are several good reasons Jane has low desire and arousal. We're going to take the emotions out, and we're logically going to break down her story to understand why.
So Jane is exhausted. She's exhausted from lack of sleep. She's exhausted from stress. She's running on empty, and she feels like she has very little time to herself.
Jane can orgasm and is okay with the bodily act of sex, so she can rule out any medical issues. She walks into the sexual experience full of resentment and anger.
And she puts her needs a distant second to her husband's needs, even though he does make sure that she comes first. She experiences multiple orgasms with most sexual encounters, and yet she still does not desire sex. So there has to be more to her sexual fulfillment than simply having an orgasm.
Yeah. Jane is choosing to have obligation sex. And each time she chooses to have obligation sex, her guilt, shame, resentment, and anxiety grow.
And she isn't comfortable or confident enough to discuss her unhappiness about their sex life. But she feels miserable inside. Those are her words, because when she asks for her needs to be met, it turns into something that she doesn't want, which is long, drawn out sex.
Jane believes this is her fault. She
Mm.
says, "Is it wrong to keep this up?" And there's something wrong with her. She says, "I've never had a big sex drive." To be clear, Jane is not broken. The sex she is having is broken. Jane is fine. Her lack of sexual desire and arousal are a natural response to the demanding situational factors in her life. And Jane needs to let go of the shame and self blame.
So, how do you think Jane's relationship and sex life could change if she assertively discussed one or all of these points with her husband? How do you think her husband would react to hearing this? What do you think?
Um, I, realistically, I think he'd be upset. And I think when we don't tell our partner anything like, for a long time, like what it doesn't have to be sex, but if we're keeping a secret from our partner, of course they're going to be upset when they
Yeah.
first hear it. And what this is Jane setting some sexual boundaries. And I find that women who don't feel worthy are absolutely unable to set sexual boundaries with their partner.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I think so often, and again, this is the nurturer, this is the carer in us. And her fear of him being upset, her fear of rocking the boat is what's holding her back from sharing this. But the other thing to consider is he might be grateful for to hear what she's really experiencing. He might be grateful to know. He might be relieved. I suspect that he probably already kind of knows this. I think that he may have some inclination, and having it finally validated, having her finally speak up and say, look, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm feeling. I would really prefer to do this instead. And then opening up to that honesty. I always like to assume the best, but prepare for the worst. There's a possibility too that he might just say, I'm so glad you finally shared this with me. What can we do? How can we work this out? How can we make this into something positive for both of us?
Find out this and so much more by subscribing to the Sensational Sex Podcast. And please grab our free gift to you. Links will be in the description. And if you like this podcast, then make sure to check out this next one coming up.